Hello, my friends. It's Mrs. Mann, and we are still plugging away with negative exponents. So let's do it. My biggest suggestion with these is to not get all caught up with the whole picture, but just to start and move in sections. Okay. So, for example, in A, the first thing that we want to deal with are the numbers, the coefficients. Okay. And the reason why we want to deal with those first is because they are just like normal numbers. This is a fraction, my dears. This is -6/10, which we know how to simplify. So I want you to think about when you reduce -6 on the top over 10 on the bottom, just like you always have. What fraction does that become? The numerator would be on the top of this bar, and the denominator would be on the bottom. This set of numbers is just a set of numbers. They don't have anything to do with the exponents. So don't get all confused about subtracting and moving and all that jazz, right? It's just good old fraction, -6/10. All right, now we get to our C's. So we're going to put this maybe in a different color. What do you notice about C to the -5th on the top? Ooh, and C to the -5th on the bottom. They match, don't they? So whenever you have the exact same thing on the top as on the bottom, what do we know about them? They cancel out. You didn't need to move this bottom to the top and this top to the bottom because they're the exact same thing. Boom, they're gone. So now we move to the D's. So we are going to have to do a little bit of work with this one. The D to the second is perfectly happy where he is. But the D to the -3rd on the bottom is not. He's complaining. He doesn't like it down here in the basement. Where does he want to go? He wants to go to the top. So what do we wind up with? I'm going to put this over here to help you. We have that D to the second still hanging out. And now we have a D to the third. Remember, once we move it, he's happy. He loses his negative sign. And I want you to think about what happens when you have D to the second times D to the third. Remember what we do with those exponents. And finally, we look at our E's. Now, don't fall into the trap of thinking that these cancel out like the C's did. Look, the C's had the exact same exponent. They were both -5s. The E's don't. This E on the top has a -4. This E on the bottom is happy where he is. So what has to happen? Well, this dude needs to come down to the bottom. So we still have this E to the fourth that was already there. And now we have another E to the fourth, and we're going to multiply. So I've just made yourself some little notes here. Don't think that this is your final answer. I'm just reminding you what you need to do with the D's and the E's, and then you need to remember to deal with this coefficient, -6/10. All right, moving on to B. I'm going to keep on with my color-coded theme here. I'm going to deal with the numbers first, the coefficients. So I have 4 and I have 1/4. And I'm multiplying those together like I always have. These are just regular old numbers. Okay? So I want you to think about what happens when you have 4 times 1/4. What happens there? That's going to be your number that comes in first. Now let's look at our x's. So we have x to the -2nd and we have x to the +2nd. What do we do with our exponents when we're multiplying? Hopefully you remember that we add them. So what happens if we have a -2 added to a +2? Well, we get x to the 0 power. So I want you to think about how we can simplify that. What did we learn about anything raised to the 0 power? And finally, this should look somewhat familiar to you. We have y to the fifth times y to the negative fifth. So we add these exponents, and 5 plus negative 5, we wind up with y to the 0 power. So we're going to have some kind of constant here, and then I want you to think about what happens with x to the 0 and what happens to y to the 0, and you will have your final answer.